Welcome back to the Social Seller Podcast with Conor Paulsen, where we interview the world's highest quality communicators, professionals, business owners, creatives, and everything in between. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're a high quality communicator, there's a good chance you're living a lot happier life, but you're also bringing those opportunities into your life almost like a magnet. My guarantee is that on this show, we only interview people that I, one, look up to, and two, that I know are going to continue to kill the game for years to come, and I want to make sure they're on your radar. But what I've learned is by asking the best questions, we get the best responses, and that's what the highest quality communicators, our social sellers, are all about. Let's hop inside to the Social Seller Podcast. We have a special episode. Welcome back to the Social Seller episode. It is another beautiful Tuesday, and you are listening in and about to get some massive value and have not only a brother for life, a personal friend, someone that I've competed with and against, and more so with collaboratively. Luckily, we went to the same college, but a legend in the global collegiate business competition space. Now, that's just one small aspect behind this co-founder. His name is Matt Rooda. And I know anyone from the University of Iowa has most likely heard his name if they graduated in the last 5 to 7 years. You were the poster child from the University of Iowa's entrepreneurial program, aka JPEC, which is a top 3 program at the time. I'm assuming it's still got to be top 20 or top 25. Why? Because it was shared curriculum with Stanford, as far as I was told when I was an ambassador for JPEC back in the day. Now, you are 28 years old, like myself. You grew up in small town Iowa in a different part, Pella, right?
Yep.
And you are an exceptional, and I'm purposely, I don't think I've said exceptional to anyone else, like any guest yet, an exceptional communicator, because we see eye to eye, and I just constantly am looking up to you. So Matt Rooda, co-founder of SwineTech, thank you for being here. Now, I know there could be a long biography or bio that I could list off, and all the awards and medals and trophies and most importantly, the big checks, untaxed. I know from our previous conversations in your college years starting SwineTech that between you and Abraham and competition earnings brought in somewhere north of $350K plus in untaxed grant money, right? Meaning you do not, that's money going straight to the company. Is that true, man? And what brings you here today, man?
Yeah, college was a lot of fun once we started doing pitch competitions. It was a great opportunity to travel and to bring in some non-dilutive funding for the business. And I got to do it with my best friend and a bunch of friends over at JPEC. So it was just a good old time. I'm here today trying to change the world in regards to animal protein. We are building solutions for farmers to drive a high quality, individualized care for animals. And that started with creating voice recognition technology to save little baby pigs from getting laid on by their mothers. And it's now evolving into taking what is used in healthcare to provide individualized care to animal operations all over the world.
Damn. Condensed communicator and to the point. Props, man. I'm working on that. Condensing it, not going down the rabbit holes. Could we queue up potentially in the next few minutes what I would call one of the famous videos of when you would bring into competitions what one of your original hardware pieces did and saved cute little piglets' lives, man. We both grew up on farms. We both grew up around swine, aka pigs, hogs, and something for the listeners to hopefully catch on to. And I think something that continues to pique my curiosity is that a lot of the world forgets that agriculture has almost always some of the leading innovation in technology. And growing up on a farm, I still didn't even think that was necessarily true. But then I started seeing how, again, technology grows at a compounded rate, how that bell curve kind of works. And it goes to ag because so much money's in this space already and money's put in machinery. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I was helping drive self-driving tractors when I was 8 years old. Like, when you think about it, it's just crazy. Like, obviously, I had somebody there helping me when I was 8 years old, but it was a self-driving tractor. It was autonomous, and we had it 20 years ago.
That's wild. Did not know that. I love that context. We did not have that on the Paulsen farm up until probably in the last decade or so. But you realize why though too, right? Because for a farmer, it's a necessity. You have a finite amount of land, right? you could have 1,000 acres of land, but that doesn't really compete nowadays, right?
No, it
Like
doesn't
I feel like
compete.
it's commercial farming is like the only way you can either compete or you get swallowed up.
Well, absolutely. And everyone says, well, it's a family farmer. And their view of a family farmer is this little couple acres where I have a goat, a chicken, a pig, and a cow. But in reality, the family farmer today is very large, and they've had to become large in order to be relevant and in order to stay into business. And when we look at sustainability, there's a lot of pressure being placed on agriculture and on the world in general. But when we look at what we did with an acre of land 50 years ago and what we do with it today, like 10 to 20x the production. And so locally, we're incredibly sustainable. And it's in the farmer's best interest to be sustainable. And I think a lot of people lose insight of that as well. If the farmer can produce more with less, they're able to be more viable as a business. And so it's in their best interest to be sustainable. So they're already thinking about, how do I do more with less? How do I prevent erosion? How do I prevent compaction? How do I use less chemicals? Because that's less losses on their side. And so we just need to do a better job of talking with the farmers to understand what are their sustainability goals and how can we align with them as a society.
I love that. My dad and his farmer buddies would all be cheering right now because
Yes,
I completely agree. In the 12 years of 4-H and FFA throughout that process, I'm loving it. Matt, to dive into your story for anyone that doesn't know about Matt Rooda yet, you're a kid from Iowa. Can you talk about what your upbringing was like and why the hell you got into business? Because it wasn't a
absolutely.
typical story, and I've heard a lot of these, but this one's not like any of the others.
It was a little different. It was a little different. So growing up at a very young age, I was involved with my family's farm. My grandfather had his own farm. My dad managed a few different operations for a larger producer, and I was able to be a part of that. So at 3 years old, I was riding in the feed bucket as we were feeding little pigs. And I was riding in the tractor and helping with all of those things. But my mom was in healthcare and she took care of handicapped individuals and she was a teacher. And so I got to see that side of things. And my grandfather, that was on my mother's side, he had residential real estate and was at that time the business owner of the family, outside of agriculture. And so I got to see a lot of different backgrounds. But the one that I was most interested in was, how can I provide high quality care to little pigs on the farm? And a lot of people might think that, oh, people don't care all that much. It's just a pig. Well, no, it's a pig. It's a life. And while we're taking care of it, it's our job to be good caretakers of that animal. So I really enjoyed that. As I got older, I kind of got mischievous. I was a very naughty kid. I always got in trouble. I wasn't the bad kid, but I was definitely the naughty kid. I loved pushing barriers. So I always wanted to figure out, how far could I go until shit hit the fan. And when it hit the fan, I tried to talk my way out of it as best as possible and then not push it that far again. But I also got involved in contracting out my time vaccinating pigs in fourth grade. So not many fourth graders would get a job. Well, I got a job. I'd ride my four-wheeler out a couple miles and I'd go and vaccinate pigs for a farmer. Took forever. Then as I got older, I was like, I'm not making near as much money. It's not taking nearly as long. What's going on here? How do I make more? And my dad was like, you could ask to get contracted out per pig. So I went and asked the farmer if he'd pay me 5 cents per pig and changed the business model. And sure enough, I made way more money in way less time. So at fourth, fifth, sixth grade, I was changing business models without even knowing it.
How much were
I
you
mean, at
making?
the same time, you grow up on a gravel road and you see all these movies about and TV shows about building a lemonade stand. I learned very quickly about product placement. Like selling lemonade on the side of a gravel road lasted all a whole 2 days before I realized there were only two customers. It was only the mailman and it wasn't worth my time.
Yeah. Yeah. So wait, third, fourth grade, because I don't even know this and I'm curious myself. How much were you earning at 5 cents a hog or a head?
Oh, I had to figure it out, but I mean, you're in that $300 to $400 in a week. And you do that, you'd roll it 3 times a year. So as a little kid, you're pulling in a decent amount of money. So I used that to buy
Yeah.
my first shotgun and some other things I wanted. And I was big
I
into
love it.
NASCAR, still am. And so I'd buy things that are worthless or have little value to anybody but myself. And it was just a way for me to get money to go do things. My family wasn't poor, but we weren't well off either. Most of the cash flow my parents had went towards a private education for me. And so I usually used whatever I was making to buy PlayStation 2 games or other things that I just couldn't get unless it was my birthday or Christmas.
Yeah, man. God, it's so good to just catch up. You're a humble dude. That's the beauty of Iowa, man. Um, there are a handful of topics that I want to dive into. And before we hop into anything else, a clear differentiator and what separates you, and I don't know anyone else in any of the circles or people that I've met to date that has competed so well on stage, that's been confident and comfortable in front of stages and judges in all ranges and spectrums. Now, I know you've met with a handful of the Shark Tank people to everything in between from our time at Iowa and the people that came in and out. And we were very fortunate to be able to travel on the university's budget. And we realized how fun that is, right? Like, as long as we get into these competitions, damn, the university is willing to pay for, we go anywhere in the world. Now you got to leverage that. You and Abe got to leverage that more than anyone else, to the point where there were times that you and Abe had to be showing up in places. And then there was a time, I don't know if you and Abe remember, where you recruited me to go present on your behalf for your company in Minneapolis. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we were in so many of these things and we were winning most of them, that we were like, hey, Conor, you're a really good presenter. Would you be able to drive up to, where was it, Minneapolis, and give a presentation for us? Wasn't it Minneapolis?
It was Minneapolis, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And no, I loved it because it felt like an honor. You were a friend, you and Abe, and I wanted to be able to help, all being Hawkeyes. But then the next level was, there was a part of me that was like, down the road, it'll just be fun to be able to say, like, I got to do that. Now, like, you had already like won the competition. I was going to like present because there were investors coming that were already interested or something. So what's nice is it wasn't full blown competing. Now, the point here is that you're an exceptional communicator. And from what I've come to understand, exceptional communicators come from personal experience. They come from trial and error. And they come from hopefully having some quality values and learning how to communicate. And that it's not just what we're saying, it's how well what we're saying is being received, and vice versa. There's a reason that separates you to be able to compete at those levels under pressure, right? And to be able to earn numbers that I don't think, I'm going to go as far as saying, as far as I know, but you and me have been out of college now for at least 5 years. Well, almost 5. I don't think anyone has earned as much as you throughout multiple competitions. Now, there could be new ones out that you can earn a lot more, but I'm saying it for any listener to notice the importance of communication and confidence hidden in behind the direct question that I'm going to ask. And the question is going to be, Matt, what separated you throughout your whole collegiate career? Because you were the face of SwineTech, right? You were the one on stage. You were the one, applying for these. What separated you from anyone else? Now, looking back.
Yeah, looking back, it was a lot of different things. I mean, we were passionate. We had passion, conviction. We were prepared. We evolved. We grew. It was constant improvement. We practiced. I mean, in that preparation piece, I mean, it was nonstop iteration. And so Abe and I would work together tirelessly to figure out what is the absolute perfect way that we can present this. And it meant going to extremes on overdoing it, underdoing it. And we just kind of had to learn what would resonate best with others. I mean, one great example was I was up with Dalton and Eric at the International Business Model Competition. And this was 50 students. And the first 25 went past the first round. And the second round, it was 10, then 5, and then 1. And we did the practice round. And the judges were like, I'm sorry, I don't think this is going to make it. But if you do these things, it might help. And so over the 2 hours I had left, I talked to as many people as I could. And I figured out, how do I need to switch this to fit what these judges are looking for? And sure enough, we were 24th. We were 24th out of 25th after the first round. And then they told me, it was great. It was great. You made it this far. I was like, but what else? What else do I need to be doing? And during that first presentation, I was watching everyone. How were they reacting? How were they responding? What were the questions they asked? And I changed my pitch again. And I'm talking like half of my pitch changed again. Memorized a new one in 2 hours, presented, made top 5. This time I was the 5th team accepted. And then I made some more changes and ended up winning that competition. But the only reason we ever won was because we were listening to the feedback and applying it as quickly as possible. Fail fast, improve fast, and succeed and win. And that was really what we were focusing on each and every time we went into a competition. And that one itself was probably the most rigorous in regards to how much I had to change throughout the different rounds. But it's a ton of fun. I always got a thrill out of it.
You definitely did, man. You definitely did. I experienced the same thrill. I couldn't imagine what it's like when you bring home 10x more.
Oh, it was
Right? And
infectious.
you get to hold
We
the
were
biggest checks, and they don't
we were
only say
yeah.
100K plus, but it's like they're actual big checks too.
It was great. We'd take off and we'd land and we'd win and we'd take off and we'd go to class and then we'd take off
It was
again. And
nonstop.
it was nonstop
Bro,
because you
you
have pitch
guys,
competition season. Like there's basically 2 months where everyone's doing them. And if I didn't have flexible professors, there's no way I could have done it. I was in class maybe one day out of every 5 because I was pitching throughout the entire
somewhere in
week.
the world, in every single thing, almost every single dollar was being paid for by the university, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm so glad you say that, because I want to make sure listeners understand the only reason why we're hitting on this point is that I don't think a lot of the world, and what we were talking about before this call, and I just haven't seen in content, people talking about going to business competitions in college, like through your university, right? And getting this untaxed grant money for your company. And
I
early
think
on, that
Iowa's
helps
the
out
only
tremendously.
one. I think Iowa is the only one that pays for all of your travel. It was the greatest thing they could have ever done. I've never heard of another
Do they
university.
still do it?
What?
I think they still do it.
They still do it, but I've never heard of another university who says, if you get accepted, we will pay for it.
In why, right? Someone might question why. And I fully get it. And I would do the exact same thing, because the crew, when we went through JPEG, and I just haven't experienced it today, right? So I don't know what's changed. I'm sure there's still got to be some authenticity, but the cool part about all of us going through, when I look back, that I didn't really notice in the time, was like the bell was just packed, right? This is a 100-year-old plus old fraternity that was remodeled and like just janky as hell, and like these little tiny cubicle rooms that are like 9 foot by 9 foot. We got to call offices, but when you're in college, that's like the coolest thing in the world, to be able to say you have an
So
office
cool.
on campus, right? Even though it's this old ass building, like
There's
doors
nothing
locked
proud
in the
about it when
basement.
you go and look. When you go back and look at those, you're like, how was I so proud of this?
How did I bring customers in here and think like, yeah, you're coming to me? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, they're coming to my office. I'm on the 3rd floor. There is no 4th floor.
Yeah.
I remember when I got to move up, and that was a part of like moving up in the Founders Club. Now, why did they pay for this? It's because it looks good for the university, simply put, right? Like, if you owned a Major League Baseball team in business and you recruited business owners, you would most likely want to get as much visibility out of your top baseball players, business owners. You know what I mean? Like, I'm creating an analogy I've never created before, so there could be flaws, but like a simple way of viewing it is like, I get it. That's good marketing. What's a better way to do it than get the people that, are creating and living maybe aligned to what we define as university entrepreneurship. And mad props to the University of Iowa for just giving us all the resources, man, from the professors, and having a filter that they would only hire professors in the entrepreneurial school, not based on how cool or their records based at other universities, but based on, did they have success previously in business firsthand, right? Not that they learned how to teach a textbook over the weekend. That was a big part of what drew me in. How about you?
Yeah. Our professors in the business school for entrepreneurship classes, they were not there because they wanted to be known as a teacher or for the money. They were there just to hang out with students who wanted to be entrepreneurs and inspire them. And I think one of the really cool things was with that, they did get representation. I mean, whether it was Duke or Princeton or Harvard or Yale or MIT, at Microsoft, there was a University of Iowa team there. And we were representing against all of these Ivy League schools. And it was just so cool to see that Tiger Hawk next to all of these schools that you typically hear are too good for a Big Ten school. It's like, no, we represented.
Amen, brother. That's exactly right. And you and Abe were doing most of that. And then Sean and Eric did some too with their name changed. It's not
OmniLife,
healthy. OmniLife.
OmniLife,
Yes. I want to make sure
transplant
because
care.
we'll add their link in the description too, because they were a huge part of all of this. And it was a combination and a collective. And what was so cool is we were all competing for ourselves and we all wanted the grant money at the end of the day. But yet what was so cool is that we were all in this dorm room facility of 3 floors with maybe 8 dorm rooms on each floor. But, in our heyday, there was at least a 3-year period where it felt like at least 12 hours out of the day, 60 or 70% of the people were occupied in their office. Like they wanted to spend time there. And if you had questions, you could go up a floor, down a floor to someone's office, and you knew they were the ones that specialized or spent more time in marketing.
And we were great competitors for one another. When we think about it, every time one of us did something well, it raised the bar for everyone. And it was so cool to see you go off and do great things on the customer side and on the marketing side and the branding side. We'd all sit back and go, wow, look at Gentleman Cares branding. That's legit. Like, why can't I be more like that? And then you look at Ryan and he'd be in his office for 20 hours and maybe sleep 4. And you'd be like, holy cow, how is this guy putting in so much time? And then Eric and Dalton, they're basically living in their office. And you're like, man, am I doing this right? And we're out there winning some stuff. And it was just, we all built on one another and helped one another whenever we needed it. And it was a great family in that entrepreneurship program.
Right. And whether it's there today or not, I'm confident that between what you, me, Shaw Boy, and a handful of the other names, and there's a handful of others that we haven't mentioned,
Bunch
from
others.
Shao to a handful, right, that have all made that. I have
Bailey,
no
how many
doubt that
shoes did that guy
collectively, and
sell out of
Bailey,
that,
oh my
that
gosh,
room?
oh my gosh, and then Daniel to like Madison to the list just goes on, and it's so cool because those are such impactful people that I will always look up to, and like yourself. Now, the point that I want to make here, Matt, is even though you started to create a reputation, I mean, you were straight up living a rock star lifestyle. You defined a new lifestyle. Like Steph Curry defined a whole new way to show up in the NBA and not be as big, and like be able to show up and dribble better than anyone else, and like ball control, and then, accuracy behind the arc. You came in and like were a favor, and I swear to God, any other college business like team had to have started seeing these show up like online, like, oh, SwineTech. Like, now, can you imagine what it felt like for anyone at the University of Iowa, dude? And all we're seeing is big ass checks show up. Like literally, some weeks it'd be 2 or 3, I swear. And it was like most of these competitions aren't at that level, but I'm not exaggerating with the sense that I swear for a year and a half of my life, and I'm sure most of JPEG and people in the Founders Club through this realm with Jeff Knock and everything would agree that like not only was there a new check every few days, it was a new email blast going out like congratulating you. And it was like, dude, props. I love that. But what I love on top of this, and the point that I'm making, is that we could all go to a competition and let's say the top 10 in the country were taken in, and three University of Iowa teams were taken in, you, me, and Dalton. We could go there and we are all prepping and helping and priming each other. And you would be the number one person there helping critique and being present. Like, even though you might have to present first and you present in 30 minutes, you would go, and I remember this clearly, you go out of your way to be like, no. But what I watched throughout our years is how often you would spend the extra time, like myself, but you would work with others and help who you could easily look at as direct competitors, right? But you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it as there's enough pie for the whole world. And honestly, that's a life hack for anyone, right? Like it's a life hack as a business owner, but just in general, there's always more than enough. Like, never think scarcity. You've always been able to do that. So not only were you this quote unquote legend, I'll say, but it was this guy that was also real and we could reach out to, and you wanted to help us. And even if we were going to compete and it was top 10, and then the top 3 got to move on, and let's say 2 from the University of Iowa out of the 3 made it on, you would still be there, you know, like giving feedback, because we would look at each other and we go, well, hey, regardless, we have first and second spot. So there's only 5 of us. So, all right, how do we get first and second spot? Like, how do we position ourselves? I mean, if this means OmniLife is first, like they're positioned well right now. Maybe this is a little bit more healthcare focused, or we know 2 of the judges are healthcare focused. You know what I mean? I remember all the conversations we were having, but you were an exceptional communicator and you've done some purposeful work, and you, on top of that, know how to network like no other, man. Between you, me, Shao, and I would even say like Shaw too at times, but you, me, and Shao especially, when we would work certain rooms, like there was a flow that we could hit, that we knew what opportunities we could help each other with. Do you remember that time we went to that networking event in Des Moines, and
yes,
it was the first ever with Brandon Adams?
We all knew what each other wanted, and then we all went out and found it. And if the person wasn't for us, we connected them to who it was for, and we just went and talked to everybody. If it wasn't for me, it was for you or Shao, and you guys did the same thing. And we all found relevant connections that way that we might have not found otherwise, because it would have taken too long.
Right. And we worked a room from corner to corner, and it was, we weren't looking for ourselves personally. We were almost looking for each other. And that's what, like, you would meet someone and, oh, whoa, you know, Karen, nice to meet you. Oh, you're a chiropractor and wherever, Kansas City. Oh, that's awesome. But immediately I know in my mind, like, no, that's not anywhere close to my ideal. But Andrew's working on some spiritual VR shit, and like, you know, like whatever, I'm making up an example. And I was like, hey, immediately almost being able to control the conversation, like, but providing real authentic value was, I have a friend here in this room and I'm not sure where he's at, but if I introduce you to him, I think you guys might not only kick it off, but I think there might be a business opportunity.
Oh yeah.
Would you be open to that? You know what I mean? Right. You and me knew the hooks and things. And I looked up to you for that.
Well, throughout all of that too, like, the view externally versus what was kind of going on, it just had to be crazy too. And Maddie, my fiance, she got a sight of that. I mean, I'm driving a Monte Carlo that squeaks and sounds like you're in a casino. I am living in not the nicest place. I didn't want to buy a great place because, shoot, I'm never home. But I also knew that as an entrepreneur, or as somebody who has unpredictable income, I didn't want to know what was next. If I could keep myself in this college mentality, I'm broke, I'm poor, without exposing myself to a new status quo of living, I could be scrappy. And so I held myself to that, and probably did that a little too long. So words of advice, don't do that too long. But it was definitely helpful, because it kept reminding me why. Why are we doing this? And that was not the only reason. But it was, I don't want to live like this forever. And I want to do great things. I want to change the world. And I have to sacrifice some things to get there.
You're exactly right. Almost like you're saying, I know I want to live a better life. And I realize other people get to live a better life. And I'm willing to work hard to create a real life like that. I'm not looking for shortcuts. And I'm willing to work hard enough to get there.
Yeah.
And I know it might not come this year, and it might be 10 years or 20 years, but I'm willing to do it because I want to give it back to my family, my friends, my loved ones. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat accurate. Part of it's just a challenge, and part of it's going out there and just working really hard and solving problems. And that's fun for me too. I think everything that's happened since college and since all the business plan competitions would never have been sustainable if I wasn't in it for the right reasons. But that was a whirlwind. That was definitely a whirlwind, because when we started, I never thought anybody would care about pigs. I didn't think any of that was going to happen. I never traveled outside the Midwest other than to California once. And so to be able to travel the world and have people from all these big universities care about something that I didn't think anybody would care about, it was overwhelming. And we lived in the moment.
I love that, man. You're such a genuine dude, and anyone that knows you and listening to this, I'm so glad I'm just glad we get to catch up. I'm excited because I know more business is coming down the road. There's a couple things that I want to bring up in particular that make our relationship unique. Now, one thing we talked about before, and again, context, is we are some small town kids from Iowa. If you grew up in an educated, wealthy household in a wealthy neighborhood and environment, you might have gone to schools like MIT and got invited to competitions like the Under Armour competition, where you had to be smart and have an IQ and tech in like a real fancy team with cool education. Now, Matt, what was your experience with MIT and this Under Armour competition? Now, I forget about it, but I remember you somehow. Yeah, I don't even want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's hear what it is, because I remember the back end of what you kept getting sent in the mail, like you were some pro athlete.
Oh yeah, they kept sending us gear. Anyways,
dude, you nonstop. You were a full-blown professional athlete before before Cam Newton was getting boxes in the mail. You were.
I don't know. I think Josie Jewell with his office was getting more Nike shoes shipped to him than what any of us were, but that's another
we'll put
story.
Josie in the description. We're getting all the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, because he was in the bell too. Josie Jewell, linebacker for the Broncos, was right in there scrappily working on a
Peter
Picard.
Dad runs the cheese that McDonald's sells around the world, to Conor Kane, to what was the other guy? I'm blanking on his name. I mean, there was a handful of Hawkeyes. I still talk to Anthony, who's in Dallas now. But anyway, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So with this Under Armour and MIT thing, it just filled with lessons that were unexpected. So I'm at MIT. We get an inventor award from them. We get money for it. We're alongside 5 other inventors.
What does MIT stand for? And for anyone, again, what is the context? Matt.
Alrighty. Because these are ones